Gospel. Gospel music is perhaps the most joyous and exuberant of all African American music traditions. When listening to it, it is almost impossible not to smile and feel uplifted. Like blues and jazz, gospel has played an extensive and seminal role in influencing contemporary American music. Furthermore, all three are deeply rooted in Black culture and possess similar music structural characteristics. But gospel music is also fundamentally different from blues and jazz. Although blues and jazz are forms of secular music that have risen to prominence in their role as entertainment, gospel is scared music that is created as an integral component of worship in church. Blues and jazz serve primarily as vehicles for personal expression. Gospel serves as a vehicle for community cohesion and collective expression. The lyrics of blues and jazz address problems in everyday life. Gospel aims through Christianity to provide a solution to the challenge of human existence not only in this life but also for eternity. Furthermore, although blues and jazz tend to be performed by trained musicians, gospel is largely sung by thousands of non musicians in congregations across the country every Sunday in church. Finally, in the commercial music industry, blues and jazz are readily appealing to many different kinds of people. Gospel as religious music has tended historically to be most appealing to people who share Christian beliefs. This is changing, however, and gospel music is becoming increasingly popular outside of the church. Kirk Franklin's Why We Sing from his 1993 debut album not only spent 100 weeks on the Billboard Gospel charts, but also crossed over to R&B and became the first gospel album to go platinum, selling over 1 million copies. William Beaton and Yolanda Adams are other gospel artists who have enjoyed tremendous success beyond the traditional gospel music market. In many ways, gospel music has transcended its historical definition as religious music to become an important force more generally in American music and popular culture. Overview of gospel music. Distinguish gospels from spirituals. One of the first questions many people ask about gospel music is how is it different from spirituals? Although both are forms of religious music, they emerged at different times and out of different social contexts. The spiritual emerged in rural communities, especially the large agriculture plantations of the pre-Civil War South. During the years of slavery, spirituals increased in number and style in the independent black churches, segregated camps, and bush meetings, and in what are called the invisible churches on the plantations. The churches were invisible because they were maintained without physical structures, as the religious gatherings of slaves often had to be kept hidden from the surveillance of whites. Whether spirituals should be sung in the formal worship service of an established church was controversial, as many of the Protestant clergymen wanted the congregations to sing the hymns and psalms of the white church. Gospel music, by contrast, evolved in urban settings in the 20th century and reflects the influence of emancipation. After the Civil War, new religious denominations began to develop funded by individuals who had left the traditional churches. These new denominations fell into two categories: those that followed the conventions and procedures of the European-based mother churches, and those that struck out in new directions that emphasized African traditions. These later churches included various holiness and sanctified sects. In these churches, the African-based musical practices of the earlier slave invisible churches were maintained. These musical practices included hand clapping, foot stomping, call and response performance, rhythmic complexity, melodic improvisation, heterophonic textures, and percussive accompaniment. It was within the services of these churches that gospel music was born. Further differences between spirituals and gospel music can be seen in the structural characteristics. Structural characteristics: melody, rhythm, and harmony. Melodies in gospel music incorporate many of the bent notes and blue notes, lower thirds and sevenths, associated with the blues. Spirituals, by contrast, only occasionally use these notes. Gospel music is rhythm, rhythmic, mic- rhythmic, rhy- rhythmically, rhythmically intense, with strong emphasis on the second and fourth beats, the beats that tend to be de-emphasized and considered weak in European-based music. Often the rhythm is further characterized by syncopation and enhanced by percussion instruments and by the playing of other instruments in a percussive manner. Spirituals, by contrast, are often in a free, rhapsodic rhythm or in the concert versions in a style more closely associated with the non-syncopated and metrical rhythm of European classical music. Texture, instruments, and form. Gospel songs are sung in a homophonic texture, with a great deal of emphasis on call and response performance style. The early spirituals, by contrast, were sung in a monophonic and heterophonic texture and in a direct performance style. Concert versions of spirituals are homophonic, but still in direct performance style. Gospel songs are accompanied by instruments such as the piano, organ, and drums, and this instrumental accompaniment is considered integral to the performance. Spirituals, by contrast, are sung without accompaniment, a cappella, or sung with simple, understated accompaniment. Gospel is sung by an ensemble. Spirituals, except in concert arrangements for choirs, are sung by soloists. In terms of form, gospel typically uses strophic forms with verses and refrains. The songs tend to be organized in 8-bar phrases, grouped together in units of 16 measures or 32 measures. Spirituals often are organized into single melodies that are repeated, represented by the letter A, or sometimes AB, sometimes AA, AB. Texts of spirituals and gospel. An additional important distinction is in the texts. The lyrics to gospel songs are poems that concentrate on a single theme, such as conversion, salvation, and yearning for spirit, spirituality. Spirituality. This theme is stressed throughout. Wait. Where is it? Okay, next page. In-depth focus. Throughout the 19th century, black and white churches, especially those affiliated with the Methodist and Baptist denominations sponsored camp meetings. Advertisements for meetings were printed in newspapers that would inform people of the date, time, and place of the meetings. And sponsoring or supporting organizations who provide transportation from the cities to the wood sites out of town where the meetings were held. As many as 5,000 people would attend one of these gatherings, and the events could last from a couple of days to a week. People would assemble under large tents and listen to preachers sing songs and generally participate in spiritual renewal. Although the white and black camp meetings were segregated in the separated black church gatherings, some whites attended both as participants and as guest preachers. Bush meetings were similar, but they were smaller and conducted out in the open, not under tents. Much of our knowledge of these camp meetings come from Daniel Alexander Payne, who recalled his experiences attending these meetings in Recollections of 70 Years in History of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. In Recollections, he describes his horror observing a bush meeting. After the sermon, they formed a ring, and with coats off sung, clapped their hands and stamped their feet in a most ridiculous and heathenish way. I requested the pastor to go and stop their dancing. At his request, they stopped their dancing and clapping of hands, but remained singing and rocking their bodies to and fro. After the sermon in the afternoon, having another opportunity of speaking alone to this younger leader of the singing and clapping ring, he said, "Sinners won't get converted unless there is a ring. The Spirit of God works upon people in different ways. At camp meetings, there must be a ring here, a ring there, a ring over yonder, or sinners will not get converted." These ring dances were direct descendants of African traditions. In West Africa, a popular activity was to gather to watch dancers who were dancing in a ring and participate by joining in the song refrains, clapping hands, tapping feet, or even entering the dance ring on occasions. The tradition encouraged them to shout words of encouragement or disapproval to the performers. These ring dances survived as the shout spiritual throughout the 19th century. For these shout spirituals, people would gather into two groups called the shouters, who were the dancers, and the singers. The singers would stand in one place and the shouters would move around in a circle for as long as 4 and 5 successive hours. The spiritual would be repeated over and over, taking on the character of a chant. Although the ring moved slowly at first, gradually the pace would quicken until the religious fervor of the participants and the loud and incessant music of the singers combined to produce a state of ecstasy in all present. Shouters often fell to the ground completely exhausted, but when they did, new dancers would take their place. Although white observers found the shouts or ring spirituals fascinating, they also often disapproved of it, regarding the dance as barbaric. As Southern points out, knowing nothing of African traditions, they often failed to recognize that shouters used dance in the same manner as song and prayer to communicate with God, and a shouter reached his or her deepest connection with God when the Spirit entered his body to take possession of his soul. through the repetition of phrases. Gospel texts are subjective and tend to exhort the singers to be good and to do right. Spiritual texts are oriented and tend to tell stories about biblical events. Mm, Gospel music in a historical and social context. The foundation for the development of gospel music. Three influences at the turn of the century contributed to the development of gospel music. Jubilee quartets, the tabernacle songs are of Reverend C. Albert Tedley, and the Pentecostal revival. Let us look first at the Jubilee quartets. Jubilee quartets were based in a community. They took advantage of many arrangements of spirituals that had been published in the later parts of the 19th century, were now available in notated scores of music. The quartet sang these and contemporary songs in the same manner as university choirs, only with the tradition of dramatic vocal solos. The Tidewater, Virginia area, with the Hampton Institute located nearby in Jefferson County, Alabama, the location of Tuskegee Institute, were both fertile areas for the development of Jubilee quartet singing. Quartet singing became so popular that one gospel historian, Lynn Abbott, states the pre- pervasiveness of quartet singing during the 1990s and early 19,000s was nothing less than a national pastime. So long. Wait. Skip that. Okay, let me skip to the birth of gospel in Chicago in the 1930s and 1940s. The year 1930 is often cited as gospel official moment of birth. It was in this year that Thomas Dorsey, at the Jubilee meeting of the National Baptist Convention in Chicago, performed If You See My Savior. The performance created a sensation in the tradition conservative convention officially endorsed gospel music. In an effort to give gospel music further respect, Dorsey founded the National Convention of Gospel Choirs and Choruses in Chicago in 1932, an organization that exists today. That same year, he composed one of the most famous gospel pieces, Precious Lord, Take My Hand. In the days following the death of childbirth of his wife and newborn child, Dorsey went on to achieve great fame and success as a composer, writing over 500 songs, some of which has been published in 26 languages and performed both by black and white musicians, including Jackson, Clara Ward, Sally Martin, Tennessee Ernie Ford, and Elvis Presley. In 1933, John Hammond, a legendary and highly influential record producer, talent scout, and jazz critic, organized a show called From Spirituals to Swing at Carnegie Hall in New York City. He hired Michelle's Christian singers to perform the spirituals and Sister Rosetta Tharpe to perform gospel songs. The entire show was so well received that Harmon organized a second show for the following year and also began nightclub tours, which contributed to moving the religious-based music out of the churches and into secular arenas. The decade of the 1930s also witnessed other changes in the gospel tradition. The first was apparently initiated by Dorsey, who in 1936 promoted a battle of song between Roberta and Sally Martin at Chicago Duisburg High School. He charged 15 cents admission, the first time anyone had apparently charged for entry into a sacred music concert. The concert's success created a vogue for gospel music concerts with paid admission, a tradition that has lasted to the present time. It also led to the development of paid professional gospel singers who record and who receive pay for their singing. In the 1940s, particularly after World War II, the commercial success of a multitude of vocal groups such as the Soul Stirrers, the Swan Silvertones, the Dixie Hummingbirds, the Fairfield Four, the Sensational Nightingales, and the Preaching Travelers ushered in an era known as Sweet Gospel. Important milestones included the founding of the radio program Gospel Train in 1940s by Joe Bostic for station WLIB in New York, and sister Rosetta Tharpe's performance in 1943 at the Apollo Theater in Harlem. The radio show and the proliferation of groups and secular performance in the 1940s led to a commercial boom for gospel music in the following decade. The recording and popularizing of gospel in the 1950s. The 1950s began with the first all-gospel concerts in history, the Negro Gospel and Religious Music Festival at Carnegie Hall in New York. The concert was produced by Joe Bostic and features Mahalia Jackson, who went on to become one of the most influential and successful gospel singers of all time. Additionally, during the 1950s, radio shifted from live entertainment to records, and several recording labels were founded, giving performers an opportunity to start earning big money. This era of hard gospel brought fame to groups such as the original Five Blind Boys of Alabama and the Gospel Divas and Dons, Mahalia Jackson, Clara Ward, Marion Williams, James Cleveland, Roberta Martin, and Della Reese. Although most of these artists had begun their careers in churches, they were now on heavy tour schedules, performing in auditoriums, stadiums, and concert halls, and some even in nightclubs and theaters. In 1958, the Recording Industry Association of America, an organization that monitors record sales, began to award gold and platinum record awards. Gold records are awarded when a recording has sold 1 million copies of a single or 500,000 of an album. In 1958, the Recording Industry Association of America awarded a gold record to Laurie London for her gospel rendition of It's Got the Whole World in His Hands. Some of the gospel singers, such as Mahalia Jackson and James Cleveland, managed to maintain the spiritual focus, whereas others, such as Della Reese, did not apologize nor hesitate to perform for commercial again. Gospel in the last half of the 20th century. As gospel music moved out of the churches and became more popular in the secular world, it underwent several important stylistic changes. Changes in instrumentation. In the early years, gospel quartets sang without accompaniment, whereas gospel choirs were accompanied by piano and possibly small percussion instruments such as tambourines. During the 1950s, this changed. The gospel quartet began to add guitars and occasionally a bass and piano. The gospel choir added male voices to what has been a totally female group, and the instrumental accompaniment was expanded to include electric organ, amplified guitar, and drums. By the 1970s, this was further expanded to include strings, brass instruments, and additional percussion instruments, including bongo and conga drums. For big concerts in really large performance halls, the accompaniment might be a full orchestra along with synthesizers and electronic instruments. Changes in keyboard style. Early gospel pianists played in a relatively simple style, concentrating on blues-style chords performed in a fairly straightforward manner with little ornamentation and embellishment. During the last half of the century, this style changed significantly. More complex chords and complex progressions replaced the simpler blues harmonies. Furthermore, the playing style was brilliant and flashy, stressing the pianist's ability to improvise in technically demanding ways. Gos- the proliferation of individual styles. Gospel soloists also began to develop unique personal styles that distinguished them as professional performing artists. One approach was to sing in a way that incorporated extensive kind of embellishment in terms of pitch, rhythm, and text. The singers also included a wide range of vocal qualities, from falsetto, especially for men, to full-throated singing in low registers, especially for women. Another way to demonstrate individuality was through the use of improvisation, an enduring value in black music. Conclusion. Conclusion. The traditions of black spirituals and gospel music have each had a period in American history when they were one of the strongest musical expressions of African American culture. Even after their particular era of dominance had passed, they continue to influence all subsequent music. Spirituals, both as solos and in choir arrangements, are frequent additions concert repertoire. Gospel music still plays a vital role in worship services for both African American and white churches and is crossing over into the secular arena. Gospel singer Kurt Franklin's music has been embraced by the same fans that listen to many other kinds of contemporary music, and he describes his own music as just chilling with the Lord. Franklin also sang on the soundtrack of Spike Lee's movie Get on the Bus and his fourth album, The New Nation Project entered the Billboard album charts at number 7 on its release in November 1998. Yolanda Adams received a Grammy Award for her 1993 gospel album, Save the World, and 1/4 of her tours are bookings by secular promoters at theme parks, universities, and city-owned venues. Gospel continued to influence other forms. For example, many rappers style their cadences after the rhythmic patterns in gospel music and the percussive preaching style of black ministers. Joseph Simon, better known as Run DMC, contends that the gospel sound is just beginning to reach its secular audience potential. His rap duo's gospel-inspired version of Down with the King sold a million copies as a single, with the album selling in excess of 500,000 copies. Gospel music is now firmly established as a musical tradition throughout the United States and has also become popular internationally. In addition to serving a vital function in the liturgical services of churches of all denominations, gospel choirs are also becoming increasingly popular additions to the performing ensembles on college campuses. In Chicago, around 70,000 gospel fans gather every year for the Chicago Gospel Festival, where acts range from traditional choirs and quartets to contemporary sounds and fusions. Church conventions in which gospel music plays an important role, such as the annual Church of God in Christ convention in Memphis, Tennessee hosts delegations from as far away as Africa, Haiti, and London. The gospel music performing United Choir at this convention frequently consists of several thousand singers. The recording industry is also producing gospel music recordings of both famous and not famous musicians. Hence, although gospel music may have arisen as a specific expression of African American culture at an earlier time in American history, it continues to be tremendously popular as it also influences and shapes the musical traditions of America as a whole.